As a kid, I loved those choose your own adventure books. They had super crazy and fun stories. When making certain choices, I'd keep a finger on the page with the choice just in case it led to a bad ending so I could go back and choose the other option. My favorite though were the Goosebumps versions. Give yourself goosebumps. It has been years since I read one, but I remember even the bad endings being interesting. Sometimes they were funny and sometimes horrifying, but never disappointing. But I'm not here to talk about a good book. Turns out, Choose Your Own Adventure made their own horror line right after Goosebumps started theirs. Choose Your Own Nightmare. A catchy name. I've only read one, and will someone explain to me why the horror version of this book series is more tame than the standard Choose Your Own Adventure books? Welcome to Horror Hospital. The premise is that of course we are the main character and make the choices in the story. We are the goalie for a soccer team, and when we try to stop the ball, we get injured. In one of the plot lines, it said we got kicked in the head, but the writing during the incident isn't clear. Our coach says we will be sent to Frankenstein Memorial Hospital, which we are not okay with. We've heard stories about that place. People check in, but don't check out. Yeah, it's a hospital. People are gonna die there. It's just the nature of it. This leads us to our first choice. Do we willingly get in the ambulance and go, or do we resist? If we resist, we run away and our mom in her car shows up, sees our injuries, and takes us to our usual doctor instead of the hospital. When there, the doctor holds up some fingers and tells us to count them. We see 12, but that obviously is wrong. Next choice. Guess. 1 finger or 2. 2 is the wrong guess, and the doctor sends us to the hospital we were trying to avoid. We are supposed to see Dr. Frankenstein. Brains are his specialty. When there, his assistant, Dr. Igor, talks to us first. He has us tell him the color of something. We can't tell what color it is because it keeps changing, and we can either tell him the truth or lie and say red. If we lie and say red, he leaves the room with our mom. We get dizzy and pass out. When we wake up, our mom is there and she takes us home. The headaches don't go away and it takes weeks for our balance to come back. The end. Well, that was anticlimactic. Granted, that was just one of the possible endings, but I wouldn't classify it as horror. The main character, so us the reader, are written to be scared of the hospital, but just saying you are scared isn't enough for a horror story. Maybe we just made the wrong choices and ended up with the lamest ending. So let's take a look at the alternatives. If we are honest with Dr. Igor about the color changing, he again leaves the room with our mom and we fall asleep. This time when we wake up, we are still alone and need to pee. We leave the room and run into someone who sends us to a different doctor who has us put on an ambulance that goes to the Frankenstein Sanatorium for the Insane. The doctor tells us due to the number of injuries we have had before, we obviously have Munchausen. The long list of injuries, a broken leg, food poisoning, and something undisclosed that gave us 2 weeks off of PE. Normally you'd look into abuse if you really thought a kid was getting injured too much, but this is supposed to be spooky fun, so it's fine. And hey, we are at least getting an interesting plot. What sort of choices will we have? Or is this straight up just a bad ending? Neither of those. When left alone, we use the chair to bash open the window and escape out it. Our mom is outside in her car and says the doctor is wrong. We get burgers and milkshakes. The end. Granted, the book isn't very long, but the amount of possible choices is pitiful. There are only 3 choices made before both of those endings, and they are not very interesting choices. How many fingers is the doctor holding up, or what color is this? They lack agency and are more like coin tosses than actual choices. One of the paths has us getting amnesia, and depending on our choices, we either immediately get over it, or we end up with one of the only 2 possible bad endings. The first bad ending has us running away from our mom due to the amnesia, and end up at the park. We fall asleep on a bench and wake up in a secret ward in the hospital where they suck out people's memories as an experiment, and we spend the rest of our life as a living vegetable basically. A terrible fate, yes, but not a particularly interesting read. The other ending has us going to the hospital with the amnesia, and Dr. Frankenstein takes our brain out and puts it in the body of a 45-year-old man named Hugo. Our amnesia means we believe him when he says we are Hugo and had been in a car accident. We see a newspaper that says that the real us is dead and the brain went missing. Personally, I find this particular ending terrifying in an existential way. But honestly, that is my own imagination doing most of the heavy lifting here. Having a huge chunk of your life cut away, suddenly being 45 after only being a kid? No personal memories, but probably the eternal feeling that something is wrong. It could have been a decent bad end if it was written better. Going to the hospital right away doesn't give us very interesting choices though either. We end up laying on a bed in the hallway and we fall asleep. Okay, seriously, every storyline has us falling asleep, sometimes multiple times in a single path. When we wake up, our choice is either stay there and wait or get up and look for help. Getting up and then choosing to go left, yes, one of the choices is again just a coin toss between left and right this time, and we find our mom. She takes us away from the hospital and asks us if we would rather go to the doctor today or Monday. Choose Monday and we end up feeling just fine, and the doctor says we are fine. The end. Choose today and we go to a previous path I've mentioned. How many fingers is the doctor holding up? Is that ever an actually clever trick from these kinds of stories? It annoyed me to realize it literally just sent me down a path I've already taken, but maybe I'm alone in that. Would you find that fun or clever? There is one path that is actually a scary idea, and the book spends the most time on it. If we had gone right instead of left, we end up in an empty hall. A man in a lab coat forces us to play along with his delusion where he is operating on someone. Thankfully, his scalpel is fake, but when his imaginary patient dies, he blames us. He ties us up, gags us, and he finds a real scalpel. Actual peril. Nice. He ends up flipping the bed and we use our foot to push the nurse call button. Security and nurses arrive in time. Turns out he escaped the locked ward this morning. We are now safe. The end. Did you notice something about that ending though? Besides that it's technically a good end. Once the story got interesting, there were no choices. Once again, there were only 3 choices that got us here. We went to the hospital, looked for help, and then took a right. What is the point of having choices if they aren't at least interesting? It's not like the book is invested in staying grounded. Besides the previous brain swap and memory wiping endings, there is an ending where they do surgery so we get the ability to read minds for 2 days, and it stops working right before a math test we didn't study for. Another one has a man made of different human parts named Frankie attack us and we sue the hospital for a several $1,000,000 settlement. There's a fake out in the last path. We fall asleep again and are wheeled into the morgue where the medical examiner starts to cut us up with a scalpel. Except, like I said, it was a fake out. We wake up and it was just a dream. That path gives us the option to just leave, and if we do, we walk home feeling fine and that's the end. And that was literally everything this book had to offer. I've condensed it a little, but that was really mild, right? Once again, one of my biggest pet peeves show up. The back of the book straight up lies. You can't believe your bad luck. In your first game of soccer goalie, you get kicked in the head. Now you're stuck spending the night in the hospital. You tell yourself that it's no big deal. So what if you're alone in a room with a weird mumbling guy, and the TV doesn't work, and the food is gross? That's just the beginning, because this hospital isn't like any other. It doesn't help you get better, it makes you worse. Control your fate before it's too late. What happens in this book? You make all the choices. You decide how long your nightmare will last. Choose from more than 9 terrifying endings, if you dare to. The back implies that the main plot involves an overnight hospital stay, which wasn't really there. No staying in a room, no weird hospital food, and despite the claims that this hospital makes you worse, that wasn't the plot of any of the paths. And those night endings were not terrifying. I could see arguments being made that the author didn't want to scare kids too bad, because kids are scared of the hospital anyway. To that I say, then don't make a horror story about a hospital. Or, here's an idea, do what a bunch of the other Choose Your Own Adventure books, as well as the Goosebumps books do, and that is you make the adventures outlandish and crazy. This book dips its toes in that concept with the brain swapping and the Frankenstein monster, but the vast majority of this book is about falling asleep randomly and then going home. Anytime anything actually interesting was happening, that meant there were no more choices for the reader and you had locked in an ending. Even in a horror book, there should be a happy ending or two. But that 7 of the 9 endings are good is too much, especially when compared to the kinds of endings the main series can have. This is way too easygoing. I really wanted to like this book. When I was a kid, I saw it in the store and begged for it for Christmas. Trying to survive in a hospital that is trying to make you worse sounded sick as hell. I didn't get the book for Christmas and instead got it from the library much, much later, so I went in excited. But this book's biggest crime is it's half-assed. It doesn't commit to being funny, so it's no Goosebumps in that regard. If its excuse is it doesn't want to be too scary for kids, then that falls flat as soon as you read about the guy that ties you up, gags you, and tries to cut you open. If you're going to do something, commit. Don't try to play all sides because it just ends up not appealing to anyone. Even if I end up not liking something because it's not to my taste, I will 100% respect you for sticking to your guns and going all out. If the story of the girl with the green ribbon can stay with me through all these years, your excuse of it's for kids doesn't hold any weight. What about everyone else? Is there a scary story from when you were a kid that had an impact on you? Not accidentally seen a movie that wasn't age appropriate, not that sort of lasting impression, but a scary story that despite the limitations of making it appropriate for kids, was good. Leave a comment, tell me what story even now you fondly remember.